How good is the most generic type in the game with no type advantages in a Hardcore Nuzlocke challenge, meaning if any of my Pokemon should faint, they'll have to be boxed forever. I of course also only get to capture the first normal type I find on each route, which in the early game gives us a lot of encounters, starting with Steve the Sentret. I then move on to Route 30, where our second team member is Paul the Pidgey, whose timid nature makes him pretty much completely useless. You won't be Mega Evolving in this one, buddy, sorry. I then make a quick detour to Route 46 to pick up Joey the Rattata, who easily sweeps the floor with youngster Joey, you pathetic below average Joe. I then head to the Dark Cave, which is home to my favorite Pokemon of all time. The only catch is that it's a 1% encounter rate. This means it annoyingly takes over 20 minutes to find my dear Dunsparce. And with the Serene Grace ability, Donna could be an absolute monster as soon as we get Headbutt. As one final preparation, I make sure to fight Weedles to get poisoned before the gym since Joey has Guts. I figured the extra power would make the gym fight versus Faulkner a whole lot easier. However, with Rattata's super low attack stat at this level, it barely makes any difference at all, and we can't even one-shot Pidgey, meaning we're basically just taking unnecessary damage at the end of every single turn. I'm able to outspeed Pidgeotto, and with a bite, I even managed to get the flinch. But at this point, we've almost taken half already from just poison, so I swap out into Donna as Pidgeotto goes for Roost and undoes all of my damage. I'm then hit by a Gust, and with my luck, of course it's a critical hit. At least I don't end up missing my Glare and get Pidgeotto paralyzed. This way I outspeed the next turn, but with Rage as my most powerful attacking move, I barely deal any damage at all and switch out in hopes of dealing more damage. Unfortunately, my best option is Paul, who, as I told you earlier, is pretty much useless. Paul starts out by missing a tackle. He then follows that up with another missed tackle. And just when you're thinking Paul sucks, it couldn't get any worse, he misses a third tackle. Now, if you're wondering exactly how unlikely it is to miss 3 95% accurate tackles in a row, it's a 1 in 8,000 chance, meaning I could almost have gotten a full odds shiny Pokemon. But hey, no, instead we're stuck in a really bad position against Faulkner. At least we don't get too unlucky with Steve's Fury Swipes getting in 3 hits before we get hit back with Tackle. A quick attack then gets Pidgeotto below half health as it gets fully paralyzed. I then go for another quick attack, and to my delight, Pidgeotto goes for Tackle instead of roosting up all its HP. At this point, all of my Pokemon have taken a ton of damage, so I swap into Joey, who's got the most left. We thankfully don't get crit by Gust, leaving us with just enough HP to survive poison and then finish Pidgeotto off with Bite. A terrible performance from the team, but at least everybody made it through. Having defeated the gym, we can do a few more things in Violet City, like picking up the egg from Elm's assistant. And after running back and forth for about 10 minutes straight, it finally hatches into Togepi. Now, Togepi is of course currently a fairy type in the most modern iterations of Pokemon. However, pre-Gen 6, Togepi was a regular old normal type, making it fair game on the team. That is because he's got the ability Serene Grace, otherwise I would have turned you into an omelet. Togepi also evolves through friendship, so we can instantly evolve it into Togetic by just doing a little bit more running around. Unfortunately, you cannot get a shiny stone before the Elite Four in this game, so we are stuck with Edward looking like this. Another optimization we can make before leaving Violet is picking up the HM06 for Rock Smash and spending the next hour in the ruins of Alph to pick up as many shards as possible that we can then trade with this guy for tons of useful berries. We then have to take on Team Rocket in the Slowpoke Well, who basically get completely scrambled by Edward. As my final pre-Bugsy preparations, I evolve Steve into Furret and pick up Barbara the Spearow just outside Azalea Town. Bugsy is a dangerous guy, relying on powerful critical hits with his Scyther to try and deal massive damage. But I've got a strategy that would make Optimus Prime proud. My quad effective hit just barely falls short of taking Scyther below half, and then I of course get critical hit, meaning I'm now locked in and can't switch out, and I'm dead to another U-turn. Or rather, I would be if Donna wasn't equipped with a citrus berry that we picked up from the Shard guy. Our second turn of rollout isn't enough to take Metapod out on the U-turn switch, but we outspeed immediately the following turn to take it out with hit number 3. Now, we are dead to another critical hit from Scyther, but in order to reliably crit, Bugsy has to set up Focus Energy, giving me a free turn to annihilate it with a 4th turn rollout, which ironically crits. Finally, on the 5th turn, we face Kakuna, which gets completely squashed by rollout. I hope this battle gave you new respect for Dunsparce, a Pokemon that's more than meets the eye.
Show me how to get out, you're such a smart Pokemon.
Lady, I love this Pokemon to death, but its name literally means it's a rare kind of stupid. But that just means we won't have to worry about it losing brain cells as we bash its face into things. Learning Headbutt is huge since it has a 60% chance to cause a flinch with Serene Grace. Another awesome feature of learning Headbutt is we can pick up way more new encounters from trees like Andrew the Apom in Azalea Town. We then have to pick up the radio card, and the questions are so easy. You'd have to be dumber than Dunsparce to think something like apricots were used for—
I thought the answer to the third question was surely apricots.
Whitney, you are a rare kind of stupid. The fight versus Whitney is also infamously stupid. Her Miltank relies on stomp flinches and attract misses, which is of course an incredibly annoying tactic that I decided to employ against her. Immediately, I get a 10% extra sensory flinch against her Clefairy, which is buffed to 20% because of Serene Grace. The second one unfortunately does not flinch, but it may as well have, since Clefairy wastes a turn going for Mimic to learn extra sensory right before being taken out, meaning it effectively did nothing. Miltank comes in next, and things immediately start to go south. Edward gets hit by Attract and is immobilized by Love. One stomp flinch later, and we've completely fallen into Whitney's trap. Because Eddie is still reasonably healthy and can tank one more stomp, I decide to give it one more attempt. And this time Eddie doesn't flinch or succumb to Miltank's charm, going for a charm of his own. With Miltank's offensive capabilities now cut in half, I'm safe to switch in Donna, who is of course immune to Miltank's Attract. We do still have the problem of Miltank being faster, so I go for Glare to paralyze Miltank, which activates its Lumberry to heal off the status. This Lumberry makes Miltank a lot harder to fight, since if you try to poison it, it'll just heal it off and probably take you out with a couple of stomps. In our case though, we've weakened Miltank to the point where it barely does any damage to Donna, and after getting some health back from a Citrus Berry, we finally land the second Glare for the permanent paralysis. The first headbutt lands a flinch, and the second one crits and flinches, which is amazingly followed up by a second critical hit, which crazy enough is still 10 times more likely than missing 3 tackles in a row, but a taste of her own medicine is exactly what this stupid cow deserves.
Oh no, you made Whitney cry.
Okay, it was a bit harsh to call her a stupid cow. So I wasn't even recording this part of the game to begin with because the path between Goldenrod and Ecruteak is pretty uneventful. But ironically, of course I would find a full odds shiny Sudowoodo. It doesn't help me whatsoever in a challenge where I can only use normal types, but it is still pretty awesome in contrast with my epic tackle failure against Faulkner. Then just north of Sudowoodo, I can pick up this antler girl. I then head to Route 38 where I'd love to get a Tauros, but Meowth is still a pretty awesome pickup. Preparing for Morty, we can evolve a lot of our Pokemon, first Barbara into Fearow. I also go pick up a Hoothoot in Ilex Forest, which I can evolve into Noctowl, which pretty much completely counters Gengar since it can't be put to sleep with Insomnia. However, Noctowl is pretty much just a backup plan since we now finally have Eradicate. The Ghost type gym was never going to be difficult for my normal type since I can't be hit by Shadow Ball. There's also the fact that Joey is simply faster than both Ghastly and Morty's 2 Haunters. This means the only problem on Morty's team is Gengar, which I actually could have prepared for in a slightly more optimized way. The strategy I used is to give Joey a Chesto Berry so that Gengar can't put me to sleep with Hypnosis. However, Crunch is a 2-hit KO, so I will potentially get hit by 2 Hypnosis, meaning if both of them were to connect, I'd have to swap out into Noctowl to finish off the fight, which would have been super simple. In this case, Gengar missed both of its Hypnoses, so I didn't really have to worry about it. However, I could have completely not worried about it and possibly one-shot Gengar if I would have just pre-status Joey. It's like I said, a small optimization. After the gym, I head to Route 39, where there's a lot of potential encounters we can pick up. Most of all, we'd like Tauros, but this route is the last chance we have to potentially get Snubbull. With both Intimidate and access to all 3 of the Elemental Fangs from a 120 base attack stat, Gramble would be an excellent Elite Four Pokemon. As I was running from all these dupes, all I could do was cross my fingers and pray to Arceus that I get Snubbull or Tauros. This is ducking bullshit.
My husband Chuck neglects me and all he does is think about Pokemon battles. I can't take it anymore, especially after all these letters I've been getting from a man named Steven.
Chuck, I think your wife is leaving you because you're way too consumed by Pokemon battle. Did someone say Pokemon battle? Okay, Chuck, I think this is the exact problem your wife is trying to Never mind. Chuck starts the fight by going for Double Team, which is completely useless since Barbara's got Aerial Ace, which always hits no matter what. Unfortunately, this isn't quite quite enough to take Primeape out in one hit, causing Chuck to go for a Hyper Potion as I bring Primeape right back into the red. Unfortunately, Barbara is not faster, so I'm hit by a very powerful Rock Slide, triggering my Citrus Berry, which very thankfully doesn't cause me to flinch, and I finish Primeape off with another Aerial Ace. Poliwrath comes out next, and this time I am faster, dealing enough damage with Aerial Ace to take Poliwrath below half, but just not enough to activate its own Citrus Berry. After Poliwrath then misses Hypnosis, it conveniently tightens its focus, allowing me to just take it out with another Aerial Ace for the easy win. This gives us access to the routes approaching the Safari Zone, where we can pick up another encounter, and thankfully, Farfetch'd is a dupe this time. This also means the encounter we're guaranteed to pick up is Tauros. In the actual Safari Zone itself, we can pick up one of the most important encounters of the run, Girafarig. While Girafarig isn't exactly the most impressive Pokemon, it is the only Psychic type we can get, which is a huge boon to the team. To go with our new special attacking Giraffe, we can also pick up the Choice Specs, which you might think we'd be using on Girafarig, but the best user for our specs is actually oddly Persian. We also evolve Andrew into Ambipom, which is not exactly an improvement. So with our new and mostly improved team, we take on the 6th gym leader, Pryce. I lead with Mike, who with the held Choice Specs can easily decimate Seal with a super effective Thunderbolt. Unfortunately, my plan is slightly short-sighted, since Pryce of course sends in Piloswine next, which we can't do anything to while we're locked into Thunderbolt. I switch into Anthony, but despite my best efforts to intimidate the swine, we get hit on the special side by Blizzard, which does over half. At this point, I start to panic, and basically my strategy is just gonna be to outlive his 5 Blizzard PP. Thankfully, it doesn't quite do half to Andy, so I stay in and risk a crit, which actually nets me a headbutt flinch. Because Andy's got Technician, I figured maybe double hit would be a 2-hit KO, which was not factoring in Citrus Berry, which triggers after the first hit. As long as we don't get crit by Blizzard, we'll be able to finish off Piloswine the next turn. However, it ends up, of course, getting the freeze. Once again, we've got a switch, so I send in another one of my team members at full health to hopefully not get destroyed by Blizzard, but Piloswine just misses an Ice Fang, thus allowing me to take it out the following turn with a Surf. I'm not exactly sure how Furret would carry you around in water, but I'll certainly take it. Steve, the absolute hero, then gets a flinch against Dugong, and while the second headbutt certainly doesn't, because Steve is still at full health due to the Ice Fang miss, Aurora Beam barely does anything. Steve then gets us our 6th gym badge with a final headbutt, but that's not the end of his heroics. Pretty much immediately after you fight Pryce, you've got to take on Jasmine. I make sure to pick up the Dig TM in the National Park so that we can easily destroy both of her Magnemites. She then sends in Steelix, which is going to be very hard to take down with physical hits, so I swap into Steve as Steelix misses a Screech. I then fire off a massive critical hit Surf, which almost takes Steelix out in one hit. Let me remind you that Furret's special attack stat is a pathetic 45. Steelix just ends up making up for the Screech that it missed on the switch, so we're allowed to take it out with a second Surf without any casualties. Now that we got 7 gym badges, we've got to deal with Team Rocket, which much like earlier is a very easy task for Edward to accomplish since they almost exclusively use poison types that we can destroy with extra sensory. Technically, while we're here, we can also pick up the Eevee from Bill, but like what's the point since we can't evolve it since it would cease to be a normal type. Speaking of pointless things, we can now fully evolve Paul into Pidgeot. Woo. Clair is by far the most challenging of the gym leaders. With normal types having no type advantages, she just has the strongest statted type. Thankfully, her Gyarados at least isn't too threatening to us, and I start out by going for Fake Out for just a little bit of chip damage before destroying it with a Thunderbolt. One of the main strengths of the normal type is that we generally get a very wide move pool with really strong elemental moves. Unfortunately though, we do not have access to any Ice type moves at the moment, so I just U-turn out against Dragonair and send in Joey. I was really hoping Dragonair would go for Thunder Wave here to get us paralyzed, which we'd completely dodge since we're already pre-burned, but instead I get immediately crit by a Dragon Pulse. After burn damage, there's no way we can stay in and even take another turn of burn, so I swap out into Tony. The worst part about this is Guts boosted Stab Facade would have been a one-shot against Dragonair. Instead, I try to fish for a flinch with Tony, but unfortunately, I get struck by another Dragon Pulse, taking us into the red. We are still able to stay in since Clair predictably goes for a Hyper Potion, and because Headbutt does over half and we outspeed the next turn, at least we get to finish off the first Dragonair, bringing in Kingdra. With Hyper Beam, Hydro Pump, and Dragon Pulse, this thing is a massive issue for us. Nothing on the team can take 2 hits, so we're in really big trouble. I swap in Paul, who immediately gets a healthy dose of Hydro Pump before snacking on a Citrus Berry. Now, because Paul missed every single one of his tackles against Faulkner, this quick attack is actually the only attack he gets to use during the entire run, since he then gets instantly washed away with a Hydro Pump. I then swap in Donna, and my best hope here is to get Kingdra paralyzed. As long as this Hydro Pump doesn't get a crit, I can use Clair. But of course, my luck runs dry exactly when I need it most. With Tony and Joey being my 2 strongest attackers and so low, there's no chance I can switch them in. Andy and Mike are unfortunately essential for my Elite Four plans, making it my only option to sacrifice my favorite Pokemon. You would think after all these years of doing Nuzlocks, I'd be numb to losing my team members. But losing Donna like this made me feel like when I wiped in my very first Nuzlocke ever. And now that I've lost her, there's nothing I can do to get her back. It gave me no comfort to know that my sacrifice was probably the correct play. Sure, I'd be making it through the fight, and I hopefully haven't doomed the run in the process, but I had lost the one reason I was most excited to use normal types in a Soulsilver challenge run. After taking out Kingdra, I still had to take on Dragonair, but at such low health, I go for a U-turn with Mike, which ends up getting a crit as I swap out into Andrew. He comfortably tanks the Fire Blast and then finishes off Dragonair with another crit in a row. And so I'd collected my gym badge, but at the greatest cost of my Nuzlocking career. Before the Elite Four, I needed to make some final preparations, starting by catching Doduo at the foot of Victory Road. I then head just east of Mahogany Town, where I can pick up a very important encounter, Lickitung. And thus I'd assembled my Elite Four squad, starting with Joey the Guts Raticate. With Facade, Crunch, Dig, and Sucker Punch, we're ready to deal some massive damage. We've got Grace the Girafarig to launch Psychic and Thunderbolts, and Crunch and Zen Headbutt since there really aren't any other good moves. Mike the Persian with Thunderbolt, Power Gem, Fake Out, and U-Turn. Jack the Dodrio, who doesn't really have a specific role, but's mostly here as backup for Bruno. Andy the Ambipom with Technician Double Hit, Tickle, Natural Gift, and Shadow Claw. And finally, Lawrence the Licky Licky with a myriad of powerful special attacking moves that I'll switch up depending on the matchup. Our first Elite Four opponent is the Psychic type Master Will. With the Elite Four level cap set to match Karen's 47, we're allowed to enter the Elite Four at or below that level, meaning we've got a lot of levels on Will. I also made sure to pre-burn Joey before entering the Elite Four since there won't be a way to status him once we enter. The extra levels and the 50% attack boost from Guts means we easily take care of every single one of Will's Pokemon, making for one of the easiest Elite Four battles of all time. Our second fight is versus Koga, where things get much more interesting. He starts out with Ariados, and I've made sure to give Grace the Choice Scarf to make her as fast as possible. This lets us easily outspeed Ariados and one-shot it with a stab super effective Psychic. The drawback, of course, being that we're now locked into Psychic as we face Fortress. I swap into Lawrence to avoid getting hit by a Bug-type move, but Fortress just tries to go for Protect on the switch, meaning I don't even take any damage and can finish Fortress off the next turn with a quad-effective Flamethrower. This brings in Muck, but because I've got full HP, I don't really have a good reason to switch, so I stay in and launch another Flamethrower for some pretty decent damage. Muck unfortunately goes for Minimize, but despite the increased evasion, I still connect with my second Flamethrower, which amazingly ends up getting a burn. This burn is huge since Muck is primarily a physical attacker, and my plan to fight this thing was basically gonna be switching around until I stall it out of its 5 gunk shots to then send in Grace. But with the burn, we don't even have to worry about that and can send her in immediately to finish Muck off with a Psychic. This positions us perfectly as Koga sends in Crobat, which normally would be faster than Girafarig even with the held Choice Scarf, but because of our slight level advantage, we're able to outspeed and take it out in one hit. Finally, this means we only have to deal with Venomoth, but because it's weak to Psychic and a very slow Pokemon, we easily knock it out for a second Elite Four victory. Our third opponent is Bruno, who on paper is our worst matchup in the game since fighting is Normal's only weakness. This is the reason Girafarig is one of the most important encounters in the game, since it gives us a great matchup into Koga, but it also completely trivializes the otherwise nightmarish matchup against Bruno. You see, the guy has a team full of Pokemon that are all slower than Girafarig, meaning we can equip Grace with the choice specs instead of Scarf. With our damage boosted by 50%, we easily take care of his 3 Hitmons and Machamp, leaving only his Onix. And while Psychic isn't super effective against this thing, it's got some of the worst special defense in the entire game, meaning we easily take it out. It's pretty awesome to see a rarely used Pokemon like Girafarig be so useful in a run, but defeating Bruno means we have 2 actually difficult fights ahead of us. Karen is a much more difficult matchup. For one, her levels are much closer to ours, and her Houndoom and Gengar are serious threats to the team. Umbreon can normally be a huge nuisance with Double Team, but a Guts-boosted Stab Facade is enough to take it out in one hit, bringing in Gengar. Focus Blast decimates basically everything on the team except for Grace. Her secondary Psychic typing once again proves to be invaluable as we don't take super effective damage from Focus Blast. And even though our special defense gets dropped, we can outspeed Gengar the next turn with a Choice Scarf and take it out with a single super effective Psychic. Unfortunately, this means we're locked into Psychic against a Dark-type Elite Four member, so we've got to switch as soon as she sends in Murkrow. I send in Mike, who ends up taking a Feint Attack on the switch, but it's just a Murkrow, so it barely matters. I then outspeed with a Specs-boosted super effective Power Gem, which is enough to one-shot Murkrow, but won't quite be enough to one-shot Houndoom. Unfortunately, this puts me in a terrible spot that I couldn't really prepare for without losing preparation for the other moments in the Elite Four. So this is going to be Jack's moment to shine, or rather, Jack's moment to burn. Flamethrower almost takes me out on its own, and I get a bit of health back with my Citrus Berry, and then pluck Houndoom's Citrus Berry to get back over half. Sadly, with Houndoom doing almost all of my health, this just won't be enough recovery, and I tragically lose Jack in this critical moment right before the champion fight. The worst part about it is as I send in Lawrence, I realize my huge mistake. Fatty here doesn't even take half from a Flamethrower, meaning I could have survived 2 and allowed Jack to live. I just completely overlooked it. I at least managed to defeat Houndoom, which only leaves Karen with Vileplume. Holding the Nevermelt Ice, my best option for damage is Ice Beam, which unfortunately falls just shy of taking Vileplume out. Adding to the nuisance, of course Vileplume goes for Stun Spore, making me slower. Karen then predictably goes for a full restore as I fire off another Ice Beam, which thankfully connects and brings Vileplume right back down. After the second full restore, I get fully paralyzed, leaving Vileplume at full HP. It then locks itself into its strongest move, Petal Dance, as I unfortunately get fully paralyzed. Because it looks like I can still tank a critical hit from here, I decide to take the next Petal Dance, which ends up paying off for me massively since my Ice Beam gets a crit, taking out Vileplume once and for all, meaning we now have to face the champion with only 5 Pokemon remaining. Champion Lance is tricky, not just because he's super strong, and not just because we only have 5 Pokemon left. In any other Pokemon game, the champion fight is the final fight of the game, so it doesn't matter which of our Pokemon go down. In this case, it matters immensely, since to beat the game, we still have to beat the entire Kanto region once Lance goes down. After taking out his Gyarados with a Specs Thunderbolt, he brings out his strongest Dragonite right away. I swap in Lawrence as Dragonite locks itself into Outrage. Lawrence is a very bulky boy, but despite that, we still take over half from the hit. In order to survive another one, I had to give Lawrence a Citrus Berry to get us back above half HP. We are of course super dead to a critical hit, but you can't really play around that when every single Pokemon on your team dies to that crit. Lawrence then launches his quad effective Ice Beam, and this is a roll to take Dragonite out, and it looks like we get the lowest possible roll. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that since the entire rest of the team just gets KO'd by Outrage. So sadly, I'm forced to let Lawrence go. I decide to send in Andrew, who hopefully with Technician can take Dragonite out with 2 hits from Double Hit. Crazily enough, it looks like I wouldn't have since the first one gets a crit, meaning that's how much damage my 2 hits would have done together. In comes another Dragonite, so I go for Natural Gift with a held Asper Berry to turn it into an Ice-type move, which at 60 base power gets boosted by Technician and is more than enough to take Dragonite out. In comes the final Dragonite, and since I would just go down to a Dragon Rush, I decide to go for Tickle first, but Dragonite just ends up missing, allowing me to connect with a free double hit the following turn, taking it below half health. This causes it to go for Thunder Wave the next turn, meaning I won't be able to outspeed anymore. Now being both tickled and faster, Dragonite decides to go for Hyper Beam, which is perfect for me since I'm able to survive it, and were I to miss my double hit or get fully paralyzed, I would have gotten another turn to take Dragonite out. With all 3 Dragonites down, we only have to worry about Charizard and Aerodactyl, and unfortunately, I can't really afford to switch here, so I just have to let Andy go. This does, however, pave the way for Mike to launch a Specs-boosted quad-effective Power Gem, which instantly knocks Charizard out of the sky. Aerodactyl comes out last, and without a Choice Scarf, there's no chance I outspeed. Mike is able to tank the Rock Slide, but I end up getting flinched. I quickly take a look at my other Pokemon, which will both just get 2-shot if I switch them in. At least if I let Mike go down, I might be able to use a Thunderbolt with grace. So I stay in, and Aerodactyl misses its Rock Slide. This is Mike's chance to survive the champion fight with a super effective Power Gem, but it just isn't enough. Without being quad effective, it's just not enough damage. And despite the epic Rock Slide miss, I'm in the same situation where I can't switch anything in. Even with a Choice Scarf, there's no chance Grace outspeeds. Sick of missing, Aerodactyl takes me out with an Aerial Ace. Except Aerial Ace was not the play, leaving Mike with 1 HP remaining. And 1 hit point is all I need to take out Aerodactyl with another Power Gem and becoming the Johto champion. For a second there, I thought I might have just tripped on the finish line, but it isn't quite the actual finish line. To beat the challenge, we still have to make it through Kanto, and Red and Blue are the most difficult fights in the game. Thankfully, the other gym leaders don't put up too much of a fight. Before heading to Kanto, my final task in Johto is to head to the Pokeathlon Dome, which now offers shiny stones for 3,000 points. This means I need to play a few hours of Pokeathlon in order to evolve Edward into Togekiss. Then as soon as I reach Vermilion City, my first priority is to catch the sleeping Snorlax. To do this, I immediately head to Cerulean City to pick up the machine part and thus fix the power plant, which incidentally gets me the TM for Charge Beam. I then head to Lavender Town, where this guy gets me the Pokeflute in my Pokegear. I would have had to do all these things to get Snorlax out of the way anyway, and because there's no other Pokemon we specifically need to catch in the game, I can safely just toss my Master Ball. This means I've got to start taking out the Kanto gym leaders, and since I'm already in Vermilion City, I might as well knock out Lieutenant Surge. I then head to Saffron City to take on Sabrina, which is an exceptionally easy matchup for Joey. Our only problem is that Raticate is slower than Espeon and Alakazam, which we can easily get around by just giving it the Choice Scarf and then decimating all 3 of her Pokemon with Facades. Janine has a similar problem, where the only Pokemon that can outspeed me is her lead Crobat, but since I don't even end up getting confused, I just take out her entire team with extra sensories. Erica has it even worse than Janine, since her only Pokemon that can outspeed is Jumpluff, which tries to hit me with a Leech Seed, but even if it would have succeeded, I just take all the rest of her Pokemon out with Specs Air Slashes, so there wouldn't have ever been an end of turn to get Leech Seed recovery back anyway. Before leaving Celadon, I head to the game corner in order to pick up a certain Pokemon. But first I talk to this guy who tells me Edward's hidden power is Grass, which is actually incredibly useful. I then talk to the lady to get one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, Porygon. However, to fully evolve it, we unfortunately need access to Rock Climb. Hidden Power Grass on Togekiss is actually extremely useful, especially for Brock, since literally all 5 of his Pokemon are quad weak to Grass. Misty's the one that takes the most doing, where I knock out her Golduck with a Facade, who then almost gets knocked out as I take out Lapras. I send in Edward to fight Starmie, but with Ice Beam, it proves to be incredibly dangerous, and I can't one-shot with HP Grass. I make a quick switch to Mike, who uses Fake Out to put Starmie in full restore range, and from there, I take it out with a Dark Pulse U-turn combination. This perfectly swaps me into Edward as she sends out Quagsire to finish off the fight with an HP Grass. Finally, there's Blaine, and because Edward ends up getting an Ancient Power Omni Boost helped by Serene Grace, the fight ends up being extremely short. And with the first 7 Kanto gym badges collected, we only have the 2 serious Kanto fights left. Blue's team is very serious and possibly even stronger than Red's. If you're running a mono-type team, most likely one of his Pokemon will give you serious issues. He leads with Executor, which isn't much of a problem for us since we can easily one-shot it with an Air Slash from Edward. This perfectly baits in Rhydon, which sees a super effective rock move. Unfortunately for him, we've got Hidden Power Grass, which is quad effective and easily knocks Rhydon out. Gyarados is next, and there's really nothing Edward can do here, so I swap out into Mike, who's been strategically focus sashed. This way, if Gyarados goes for Dragon Dance as I switch, I don't care if it outspeeds the next turn, since I can just take it out with a Specs Thunderbolt. Because we have 8 levels on it at the level cap, we actually end up outspeeding despite the +1 boost, and don't even go down to our Sash. Machamp comes out next, obviously threatening us with its 100% accurate Dynamic Punch. There's nothing I can do but eat this, so I swap in Barbara, who I don't think I'll bring to the final fight anyway. The reason Dynamic Punch is pretty much a death sentence is because it has a 100% chance to confuse you. Despite that, Barbara the boss breaks through confusion, connects with a Drill Peck, which even takes Machamp out in one hit. We've been getting so many crits in this run, it's like the game is making up for me missing those 95% accurate tackles. Arcanine comes out fourth, and after getting intimidated, I'm not going to be dealing much damage anyway, so I decide to save Barbara and swap out into Tony to get an Intimidate of my own. After eating an Extreme Speed on the switch, I go for an Earthquake. This does a ton of damage, but Arcanine is fairly bulky, and without Stab, it's just not enough to take it out. However, Arcanine kindly uses Flare Blitz, and the recoil puts it in full restore range. This is perfect, since it gives us a free attack on the turn he goes for the full restore, and then an Earthquake when we outspeed the turn after that to take Arcanine out. Blue's final Pokemon is Pidgeot, which I'm surprised he's got on his team at all. I don't have one on my team, and frankly, good riddance. With Anthony at such low HP, I swap out into Eddie, who gets hit by a return, which does just below half. I then launch an Ancient Power, hoping to possibly get an Omni Boost, which doesn't end up happening, and it doesn't even do half. It also causes Pidgeot to go for Mirror Move, which is actually kind of scary since Ancient Power is super effective, and it could have gotten its own Omni Boost. It thankfully doesn't, so I swap out of Ed and send in Bob. After being hit by Return on the switch, I get outsped and get hit by another one before I can fire back with a Body Slam. While this doesn't quite do enough to take Pidgeot out, I do end up getting the Paralysis, and Pidgeot then gets itself out of healing range by getting some HP back with a Citrus Berry. While Bob could take another return, I don't really want to risk a crit here, so I swap out into Mike, who's always safe to switch in because of my intact Focus Sash, and from there, I can outspeed with a super effective Thunderbolt to take out the Pidgeot and finish off the fight. With all the Kanto badges collected, Professor Oak gives me HM08 Rock Climb. And with this hidden move, we can get the final item we need in the game, the Dubious Disc, which in turn allows us to fully evolve Porygon. And with our last Pokemon of the game collected, there's only one more trainer to face. Pokemon Trainer Red, the highest level trainer in any vanilla Pokemon Nuzlocke. Naturally, he of course leads with his signature Pikachu, which with its held Light Ball is actually a fairly strong and fast Pokemon. So in order for Anthony to outspeed it and one-shot with an Earthquake, I had to equip him with a Choice Scarf. With it, we very easily outspeed and take out Red's first Pokemon. Second out is Blastoise, which is very threatening with its Focus Blast. Just like versus Karen's Gengar, my only good option here is to swap in Grace, who takes neutral damage because of her Psychic typing. Even so, we only just barely take the hit over half health after Hail. I know a Thunderbolt won't KO, but I need to do as much damage as possible for my ultimate plan. We end up doing a bit over half, and Blastoise really doesn't want to miss that Focus Blast, instead going for the 100% accurate Blizzard in the Hail, which we end up surviving, but we get frozen. A Citrus Berry then stops us from simply going down to Hail, and to my surprise the next turn, I actually thaw out. The reason I click Zen Headbutt here is I don't actually want Blastoise to go down. Thankfully, Blastoise just barely survives and then takes Grace down with a Blizzard. I was kind of worried here that I'd done a bit too much damage with Zen Headbutt, but after Hail, Blastoise survives with what must be 1 HP. This is optimal, since now when we send in the 1, Blastoise will immediately be healed by a full restore. This gives us a completely free chance to go for Charge Beam without Blastoise retaliating. I make the Power Plant guy proud by getting the special attack boost and then finish Blastoise off with a second Charge Beam, which also gets me a second special attack boost. Somehow, we've managed to place Neo in an optimal position. With a Psychic TM we picked up from Mr. Psychic in Saffron City, we easily take out Venusaur. Charizard comes out next, and with a Thunderbolt TM we picked up at the game corner, we easily one-shotted at +2 special attack. With 4 Pokemon defeated, Red only has 2 left, sending in his Lapras. Once again, we have the super effective answer, and with Lapras down, Red only has 1 Pokemon left, his own normal type, Snorlax. Against one of the specially bulkiest Pokemon in the game, I launch a +2 stab adaptability boosted Hyper Beam. And amazingly, it's enough to take Snorlax out in 1 hit. And that's how I beat a Pokemon Soulsilver Hardcore Nuzlocke using only normal types. And maybe, just maybe, you now understand why normal is my favorite type in the game. Steven, what the heck are you doing here? I'm here to go to the Pokemon fan club. And not to take Chuck's wife on a weekend cruise. That would be very inappropriate.
Just pretend he's not looking as I walk to the boat.